All right, so as I mentioned, we have a special guest today. Hopefully, it won't be so special in terms of as frequent as he comes on, and that is because we want to get Scalp Trader in here and discuss some of his trades a bit more frequently. And for you all and your lunchtime listening pleasure, we're going to bring him in. Good morning or good afternoon, Damon.
Hey, Jim. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Hey, as always, man. So, we had some listeners write in and ask what you were thinking about your particular trade in Roku today. And I guess the first thing that I want to ask you is, you have a lot of names that you recycle and you trade Roku pretty frequently. What is so appealing about a stock like Roku that gets you interested in this, that you feel that you have an edge when you trade a name like this?
Well, so with Roku, I mean, it's down over 50% over the past couple months. Along with the market, tech stocks have gotten hit, obviously, really hard. Roku's at a point where it's trading at about 4 times EV to sell. So I just like it down here as a balanced play. I think it has potential back to the $45 to $50 range. And it's a nice intraday trading stock. So it's one of those stocks that it may gap down aggressively with the market and then come running back over the course of the day, so you can get a nice 2 to 4 point price swing. So it's just one of the my watch list stocks. I typically have about 50 stocks that I'm watching every day and just trying to get a general feel for the market and the market direction. And sometimes you'll just see things gap in the opposite way of where you think the market's going. And so, for people who don't trade futures, I mean, I like to use names like Roku. They have a lot of volatility, in which I have a general bias in terms of direction, a directional kind of approach over the short term. I also use like the triple levered biotech ETFs like LABU and LABD. Those tend to trade pretty well for directional movement. And so Roku is just one of those names that has enough volatility and responds well enough on a short-term intraday basis that I like to come back to it as a trading vehicle.
All right, so you had basically 2 trades on today. You had a day trade in which you put in your risk parameters, put on two half-size units at 2 various times, and you ended up getting stopped out of that. You also got stopped out of your swing long trade in that one. So I guess walk us through how you try to differentiate the scalp trade versus the day trade when in essence you had the exact same stop on both of those. So it does get confusing, I think, for some of the listeners when you have 2 different positions on. How do you decide on that, and then do you have 2 separate accounts in which you put the day trade on versus the spec trade? Just give us some explanation as to how you handle those 2 trades.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much with everything that I trade, I'm willing to have both a short-term spec position as well as a kind of a long-term swing position. And so with something that I'm not particularly sure exactly when it's going to bottom out, but I'm bullish on it over the intermediate period of time. And I'll put a swing position on and I'll scale into it. And typically I'm risking 10 to 15% on something like that. So they risk 10 to 15% and I'm looking for 20 to 40% return. But if there's enough volatility on it in an intraday basis, especially if it's gapping away from the market, and I think that it could swing dramatically back in the other direction, I will come in and put on a intraday scalp position. So today with Roku, it was breaking down through some really important technical support, and which I saw coming, but a lot of times with this type of setup, you'll see the name get blasted through the technical support and then come roaring right back, as the momentum players get flushed out and everyone gets freaked out by the technical break. So that's really what I was looking for today on that scalp, is really trying to get that flash lower and then set up for maybe a 2-3 point swing off the lows. And so that's why I had that combination scalp and swing position. The swing position I put on, I think yesterday, and the price just came in. I started with a 1/3 position, and I typically would have added down here, and I was so focused on managing the intraday scalp that I let the stop kind of get away from me on the swing, and so I pointed out that, hey, I officially got stopped out, but I'm getting right back in, and I just wanted to let people know, since the stop was so close to kind of where the stock ended up bottoming, I'm assuming a lot of people probably just stayed with it, so at that point, hey, let's just add another third, but officially I'm stopped out, so I'm restarting this swing position that, again, I'm looking for potential price movement. It's trading around 35 right now. I'm looking for potential price movement into the $45 to $50 range. And so the intraday scalp doesn't really kind of influence my long-term outlook on the name.
All right, so you're long-term bullish, and you ended up getting stopped out. So basically it's the exact same trade with just lesser size on the swing component. Is that fair to say?
Well, this exact same size on the swing. So I started out with a third yesterday, got stopped out of it this morning. I'm restarting it just because the price just came into my stop just more quickly than I was expecting. Otherwise, if I had been managing the position, as well as I could have, I would have added another third and brought the position 2/3 size and adjusted the stop down.
Okay, got it. So in terms of your day trade that you initiated today, I have a daily chart up right now. Was there something in particular that you said you watch 50 stocks? Was there something in particular on this one from a technical basis, either on a daily or a shorter term time frame, that you saw that was particularly appealing on that day trade in Roku today?
Yeah, so, Roku gapped up with the market, and, I was expecting the market to come in and for us to see a squeeze off the early lows. And so that's the setup I was also looking for with Roku, especially given that it had broken down through some of that technical support. So Roku showed signs of relative weakness right out of the gate, came down really hard, and also at a point where I thought the market was going to start to bounce. And so what I was looking for is, hey, buy Roku down $1.50, down $2, and if the market squeezes higher, it may reverse that $1.52 points really quickly, and then also possibly start a new bull leg here. So it was one where I was risking, $1 plus to try to see if I could capture pieces of as much of a 4-point move.
All right, and you did put a swing position back on. Why wouldn't you put a day trade position back on?
Well, because the market came in more aggressively than I thought, and so a lot of times you're trying to get a feel for that first 15 to 30 minutes in terms of how the market is going to play out, and so you get a lot of positioning in the first five minutes or so. Obviously, we got a gap down. A gap up. I pointed out, hey, these some of these tech momentum names in particular are showing a lot of relative weakness out the gate, and I just wasn't sure if that was a sign of aggressive shorting or true distribution. And so I wanted to kind of wait and see how things played out for a few minutes. My take was that it was probably a combination of both, but the shorting, you might see some type of squeeze off those early lows, and that Roku would participate in that squeeze. So once Roku went red, I was in trying to scale into it, trying to capture a price bounce.
All right.
Later, over the course of the morning, you saw that squeeze wasn't going to develop. The price action didn't develop in that way. So I just didn't think that Roku was a compelling bounce squeeze candidate at that point, but I still view it as an attractive, 2 to 6 week swing long.
Okay. What are some of the other names that might be on your radar? Maybe not necessarily today, but just to give the listeners a sense of a couple of names that may be very similar to Roku, that maybe tomorrow or Thursday might be a good day for them.
So a lot of the names on my intraday daily watch list are, just names and groups that show volatility. I like to see how groups trade together. So like the pot names are still there. They haven't been showing quite the level of volatility that they had been in the recent months, but they they do allow for pretty dramatic intraday swings once they get going. So, I'm looking at price action in TLRY, CGC, PYX every day, especially if you can get a hard flush down in in a market that's gapping down. A lot of times you'll get an early turnaround in those types of names where, say, a TLRY might gap down or trade down 4 or 5 points early, and the first 15 minutes it recovers 5 to 10 points. And so always looking for those high volatility names that tend to get influenced by the directional gap in the market. So I have a lot of software names, obviously always looking at biotech, so I mentioned LabU and LabD. Right now looking at a lot of oil and gas names, just because energy has gotten hit so hard, and there's a lot of intriguing energy type names out there right now, especially now that we're in tax loss selling season. A lot of these MLP type plays or just general energy plays have gotten hit extremely hard, and looking for signs of institutional support for some of these names.
Do you have a particular setup that you look for on these, or is it a combination of setups?
So in a period like this where, it's a little bit higher volatility, I'm looking at names that I think institutions want to own. And so a lot of times you'll see, like, again, a name like Roku, where the price action from a technical perspective looks a little spooky, but from a valuation standpoint, it looks pretty attractive. And so I like names that are essentially freaking out the TA-focused traders into kind of getting rid of the position, and I can step in and buy it on the cheap and possibly participate in a major bounce off of those early technical flush lows.
All right. I think that pretty much covers Roku and a lot of your trading style. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave the listeners with that might help them maybe navigate through these more volatile times? This is a opportunity where we haven't seen in quite a while, where the VIX has picked up in the 20s now, and there's more opportunities. Is there any pro tips that you can offer the listeners?
During periods like this, obviously I don't have on a lot of positions. This is a higher volatility period, so I'm looking more at scalps. And so I personally like to put together a group of names that I'm, essentially stalking every day, just kind of getting a feel for the price action. Because, you can make a point to 3 points just scalping some of these names just based on getting a feel for, how they trade against each other, say a group of names, or how they trade versus the market, and just getting a general sense of the sentiment and whether there's news out that day, like an upgrade or a downgrade, or some other type of event that might create volatility in the name. So really just trying to understand the trading patterns of these names on a very short-term basis, and taking advantage of price action that maybe moves the stock a little bit too much, in a certain direction.
All right, and my last one is the cryptocurrency dead to you?
Yeah, crypto is one of those things. It's like almost like a once in a lifetime opportunity. It was great for, 6 or 7 months, and then it died. And I think part of that was due to just the institutional interest in it. So much money came in. Basically, January 1, prices just went through the roof. You could tell that there was institutional money that was coming in, people who had raised funds to invest in crypto that didn't want to have to worry about 2017 performance. So they wanted a fresh start, January 1, 2018, and money came in like crazy, and the market went on a wild ride, basically a vertical climb for 2 to 3 weeks after that. And it's pretty much been all downhill since then. And part of the issue is that crypto's become far more efficient. When I traded it first started trading it, I mean, there's arbitrage opportunities where you could literally buy something on one exchange, move it to another exchange, and sell it for a 40% premium. That does not exist anymore. There's been a lot of institutional platforms that have come online that really don't allow for that type of opportunity. And also, I think there's just been so much accumulation of crypto, of just coins in general, by larger funds, that they get a 5 or 10% gain on a short-term basis. They're ready to unload. And last year, I mean, you see coins run 2, 3, 4, 500% in a week. Now you get something that runs 10%, and there's an overhang. There's a constant seller out there just trying to unload it. So crypto is not it's not as exciting as it used to be, but I still have an eye on it. I have basically a watch list of probably 10 or 15 names that are lower price names, so that if I ever see Bitcoin or any of the larger coins start to go back into bull mode, I have my watch list of names that I think will kind of outperform once major names like Bitcoin demonstrate that they're kind of ready to run again.
All right, ready for some listener questions?
Certainly.
All right. One comes in and says, afternoon trades are very rare with you. While they realize that volatility in day trades is less in the afternoon, they're still pretty rare. Why do you think that is?
Just because, in the afternoon, the price action can be really random. I usually have a strong opinion about how the market will play out relative to the open, and you really have about 30 minutes in the morning to kind of capture that opportunity. So if the market's gapping up and you think it's going to come back in aggressively, you got a short window to kind of really capture that. After that first 30 to 60 minutes of trading, I think the price action has become very random. Stuff's moving based on a tweet from somewhere or some headline from somewhere that you just really can't anticipate. So it makes it a lot more difficult. So I think that just from a performance intraday scalping perspective, I just think that first 30 to 60 minutes is really the critical part of the day. And anything beyond that, I'm looking at positions to possibly put on swing trades, to add to swing positions. But on a scalping basis, the price action is really just too random for my taste.
All right, this one's about natural gas, stating natural gas prices have increased. Why are frackers doing so poorly?
I think that typically energy names tend to trade with oil. Very rarely do they trade with nat gas, especially just given that there's just so many more oil names out there. And, a lot of it can be index related or ETF related, where people are, looking at oil prices and selling energy names. And, a lot of these, there are very few kind of like pure nat gas names left out there. So, oil really kind of drives that market. But at the same time, that creates opportunity. So if you have a nat gas kind of specific name that's getting hit with energy, it's a trade I used to put on a few years ago when there were before a lot of these nat gas companies went bankrupt or sold a lot of their nat gas assets and started to buy energy related assets. I used to kind of trade that scenario where you'd see energy, crude oil prices get hit, nat gas holding up or stronger, and you kind of take advantage of that, essentially almost an arbitrage opportunity or opportunity to kind of pick out compelling names that have been oversold. But there's just not as much opportunity there in terms of a short-term trading basis. But if you find a nat gas name that's oversold that is pure nat gas, I think it's definitely worth a look.
All right, and just for the sake of clarity, there was a follow-up as to the question about why you don't trade so much in the afternoon. The listener was asking more specifically on why you don't have so many swing trades in the afternoon. Is it the same concept that you explained earlier, or is there something different about why you don't like to put on too many swing trades in the afternoon?
Yeah, so even with the swing trades, I mean, so with the gapping action, like if I'm long something, I typically like to buy it on weakness, and typically you get the gaps in the morning. So, if you have something that's gapping down a couple points, and I mean, that's when I want to add to the swing trade rather than waiting until the afternoon to see how things go. And also in the afternoon, if you have a market that's rolling over in the afternoon, a lot of times that will carry over into the next morning. So instead of buying it in the afternoon, I think, okay, this is actually an attractive price. My expectation is that we could very well gap down the next morning. I get even better price. So that's another reason I tend not to trade in the afternoon, even on swing positions.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense.
It does to me. Hopefully it does, but considering the listener wrote back in after I asked the first question, I'm sure they'll ask a follow-up.
That was a good question, the difference between the scalp and the swing. And a lot of times I'm sitting there looking at a name saying, I want to buy this here, but largely because the market is rolling over aggressively and this name has gotten to a price that I feel is compelling. But then I catch myself say, okay, well, markets, lost 2% in the afternoon and selling to, trading at the lows into the close. It's very likely that we're going to see some type of carryover action into the morning, and I'll be able to get this at a better price. So let me just put on the brakes and just see how this looks in the morning.
All right. Here's another one about here. Any interest in getting back into here, ticker HEAR, now that stock has made an island bottom reversal, bounced up and above the longer term uptrend. So are you interested in HEAR?
I do kind of like HEAR down here. It got down to 1550 or a little bit below that, and then missed an entry on that because I was hoping for kind of mid 15s, low 15s to get back into that. And I would potentially I don't want to chase it at this level. We're trading at 1780. But if we got back to the 16s, like mid to low 16s, I'd definitely be interested in picking some of that up.
Okay, and here's a new one. I'm still holding SVXY from the February trade. What does Scalp think about this long term? Is he still holding it in his personal account?
No, SVXY, they adjusted how that trades. So it's now just a one-time volatility ETF. So the thing barely moves now. And, it's just not, it's just not compelling. It doesn't offer enough volatility for it really to be a compelling trading vehicle any longer.
All right. So would you recommend to that listener to just get out of SVXY?
I don't own any. I mean, I can't tell you what to do personally, but I have no reason to own this.
Okay, let's see. I think that cleans us out of our listener questions for you, at least for the moment. Although you are always good about getting back to the feedback questions. A lot of them you respond via email. But, Damon, don't make yourself a stranger on Trader Audio.
Yeah, I'm just kind of the perspective that, I like to talk when there's something to talk about. If you guys ever have any questions, I think, today someone asked specifically about the Roku trade, and if I could come on and talk about it, happy to do so. And, but, I don't want to bore you guys with I don't have anything compelling to say. I feel like I'm comfortable just writing it on the page. But again, if you ever have any questions and you want me to come on and talk about something, feel free to write in and I'll pop on.
All right, Damon. Well, you deserved a well-deserved lunch break. How's that?
Okay. All right, sounds good. Take care, Joe.
Thanks a lot, Damon.
Okay, bye.